Didi ran to Lagos to escape love and God. But one night in the emergency room, a stranger from Abuja would force her to face both. What if the pain you're hiding from is the very thing meant to heal you? The Audio Pages presents The Healer's Heart. Chapter 1, The Lagos Pulse. The humidity of a Lagos Christmas Eve hung heavy in the air, a mix of harmattan dust, exhaust fumes, and the distant, rhythmic thrum of Afrobeat from the street parties in Obolende. Inside the Grace and Mercy Clinic, however, the air was sterile and cold, smelling of antiseptic and loneliness. Dr. Didi Yusuf rubbed her temples, the headache she'd been nursing since morning throbbing in time with the flickering fluorescent bulb above her desk. Outside, the city was celebrating Dirty December, but inside, Didi was hiding. Since the betrayal that had shattered her engagement and her trust 2 years ago, these walls were the only thing holding her together. Dr. Ejo, come quick. The frantic shout of her nurse, busy, shattered the silence. Didi bolted from her office. The front doors burst open, and chaos flooded in. A medley of groans and screams filled the small reception. A downfall bus carrying revelers from a Christmas parade had swerved to avoid a reckless Okada rider and plowed into a street market. Get the stretchers. Triage, now. Didi commanded, her fatigue vanishing. She moved quickly, assessing a woman with a broken arm, then a man with a deep gash on his forehead. But there were too many of them. Blood slicked the tired floor. Didi's heart hammered against her ribs. She was the only doctor on shift. She grabbed the bandage to staunch the bleeding of a young boy, her hands trembling slightly. Busy, call the general hospital, tell them we need, I've got the two in the corner, a deep, baritone voice cut through the panic. Didi looked up. Standing in the doorway was a man she had never seen before. He was tall, his dark skin glowing with a sheen of sweat, wearing a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal capable, steady forearms. He moved with a calm authority that seemed to lower the temperature of the room. Who are you? Didi snapped, applying pressure to the boy's leg. Dr. Emmanuel Okafor, he said, already kneeling beside a man gasping for air. I'm a missionary doctor. I just arrived from Abuja today to see my auntie down the street. I saw the crash. He didn't wait for permission. He moved with fluid precision, checking vitals and barking gentle orders to the nurses as if he had worked there for years. Didi watched him for a split second, the way his large hands were incredibly gentle, the way he whispered, "Peace, it is well," to a terrified patient. For an hour, they worked in a perfect, unspoken rhythm. Didi stitched, Emmanuel set bones. The chaos began to ebb into a managed crisis. Didi was suturing a deep laceration on the young boy's thigh when the hum of the air conditioner died. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the clinic plunged into total, suffocating darkness. Nipper. Busy groaned from the darkness. The generator, Didi shouted, feeling the boy trash beneath her hands. Someone turn on the generator. I checked it this morning, doctor, Busy's voice trembled. The fuel pump is bad. It won't start. Didi froze. She couldn't see the wound, but she could feel the warm, sticky blood pumping over her gloves. The boy's artery was nicked. Without light to clamp it, he would bleed out in minutes. I can't see. Didi cried out, panic finally cracking her voice. I'm going to lose him. Don't move your hands, Didi. Emmanuel's voice came from the blackness, dangerously close to her ear. Didi felt Emmanuel's chest brush her shoulder in the dark, his presence overwhelming. On the count of 3, he whispered, the sound of a match striking against a box tearing through the silence. You're going to have to clamp this blind. Trust me. Chapter 2, Shadows of the Past. The flare of the match illuminated Emmanuel's face, intense, focused, and terrified. He held the flame high, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. I can't do it blind, I'll sever the nerve, Didi hissed, sweat stinging her eyes. You are a healer, Didi. Your hands know the way. God is guiding you, Emmanuel said, his voice a low rumble of conviction. Now. Driven by his command, Didi shut her eyes, visualizing the anatomy. She reached into the wound with the hemostat. She felt the pulse of the bleeder. The flow stopped. A collective breath was released in the room as nurses engaged the flashlights on their phones. Moments later, the boy was stabilized. For the next 2 hours, they worked by the beams of cell phones until the grid power finally surged back on. The clinic was a mess, but everyone was alive. Didi slumped into the chair in her office, her scrub top stained with blood. A steaming cup of coffee appeared in front of her. Emmanuel sat on the edge of her desk, looking exhausted but smiling. "You have steady hands, Dr. Yusuf," he said softly. "And you have a reckless streak, Dr. Okafor," she replied, taking the coffee. The warmth spread through her chest, but it wasn't just the caffeine. "Why did you stay? You don't work here." "I go where the need is," Emmanuel shrugged. "Besides, I saw you through the window before the crash. You looked like you were carrying the weight of the world. I thought I could help lift it." Didi looked away, her guard rising. "I don't need help lifting anything. Everyone needs help, Didi. Even the strong ones." He leaned in, his eyes searching hers. "Especially at Christmas." They talked for another hour. He spoke of his missions in the north, the dust of Abuja, and his unshakable faith that every life had a purpose. Didi found herself laughing, a sound she hadn't heard in years. He was disarming, kind, and irritatingly handsome. For the first time, the ice around her heart began to thaw. "Come to church with me," he said suddenly. "Tonight. Lagos Island Church. The choir is legendary." "I don't do church." "Not anymore," Didi said, her voice hardening. "God and I, we aren't on speaking terms." "Maybe he's just been waiting for you to listen," Emmanuel challenged gently. Didi opened her mouth to refuse, to kick him out, when a heavy pounding shook the front glass doors of the clinic. It wasn't a patient. It was an angry, rhythmic banging. Didi's blood ran cold. She knew that knock. She stood up, trembling, and walked to the reception. Through the glass, standing under the street lamp, was a man in a sharp suit, holding a bottle of expensive whiskey. Kunle. Her ex-fiancé. The man who had destroyed her life. He saw her and grinned, a predatory, drunken look. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out something black and metallic. Kunle raised the object and pointed it directly at the glass door. "Open up, Didi," he screamed, his voice slurred but violent. "I know you have him in there. I know you found someone else." He racked the slide of the pistol. Chapter 3, Sanctuary. Didi froze, her feet rooted to the floor. The past she had run from was now standing on her doorstep with a gun. "Get down." Emmanuel tackled Didi, shielding her body with his own just as the glass shattered. Bang. The shot went wide, burying itself in the plaster of the ceiling. Screams erupted from the ward in the back. "Stay here," Emmanuel ordered. He didn't look like a gentle missionary anymore, he looked like a warrior. He stood up, hands raised, and walked toward the broken door. "Emmanuel, no!" Didi screamed. "Kunle." Emmanuel's voice boomed, authoritative and fearless. "Put it down. Look at where you are. Look at yourself." Kunle swayed, the gun wavering. "She's mine. She thinks she can leave me. She is a daughter of God, and she belongs to no one but herself," Emmanuel said, stepping through the broken glass, crunching debris under his boots. He walked straight up to the muzzle of the gun. He placed his hand gently over the barrel and lowered it. "Go home, brother. Before you do something you can't pray away." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Kunle looked at Emmanuel, then at Didi, who was weeping on the floor. The fight drained out of him. He dropped the gun, turned, and stumbled into the dark Lagos night. Emmanuel rushed back to Didi, scooping her up. "We have to go. He might come back, or the police will come and make this a circus. You need to be somewhere safe." "Where?" Didi sobbed, shaking uncontrollably. "The only place I know." They drove in silence, Emmanuel navigating the frantic Lagos traffic with precision. Didi stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and red. She felt exposed, broken. They crossed the third mainland bridge, the lagoon black and endless beneath them, and arrived at the Lagos Island Church. It was a beacon of light, spilling music onto the streets. Emmanuel led her inside. The air was cool and smelled of frankincense. A choir was singing Alleluia in a thunderous, joyful Yoruba harmony. Alleluia, Alleluia. They found a pew near the back. As the music washed over her, Didi felt the terror of the evening begin to recede, replaced by a strange, overwhelming grief. Emmanuel took her hand. He didn't say a word, he just held it, an anchor in the storm. The pastor began to speak of redemption, of how broken vessels hold the most light. Didi closed her eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, she prayed. She asked for peace. She asked for the strength to forgive, not Kunle, but herself. As the service neared midnight, the lights in the church dimmed for the candlelight procession. The atmosphere was magical, thousands of small flames illuminating tear-streaked faces. Emmanuel leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. I have to tell you something, Didi. Something about why I really came to Lagos. It wasn't just to visit my aunt. Didi turned to look at him, her heart skipping a beat. But before he could speak, a shadow fell over them. Didi looked up. Standing in the aisle, blocking their exit, were 2 men in police uniforms. But they weren't smiling. They weren't singing. They were scanning the crowd, and one of them locked eyes with Didi. He tapped his radio and pointed directly at her. The officer pushed through the worshippers, his hand resting on his holster. He reached the pew and grabbed Didi's arm roughly. Dr. Yusuf. You're coming with us. We have questions about the shooting. And the man you're with, he matches the description of a wanted fugitive from Abuja. Chapter 4, The Christmas Miracle. The congregation swayed as one body, voices lifted in imperfect harmony. Silent night drifted through the church, soft and reverent, carried by the gentle hum of the keyboard and the low murmur of talking drums waiting their turn. Candle flames flickered, casting warm halos across smiling faces. No one noticed the tension unraveling in the back pew. No one noticed the sharp disruption of reality pressing in against the fragile piece of worship. Didi barely registered the song anymore. Her focus narrowed to the iron grip closing around her arm. She gasped and turned sharply. What are you doing? She demanded, her voice hushed but fierce. That's impossible. He's a doctor. He saved lives tonight. The officer's face was hard, his eyes flat with suspicion. He tightened his hold as if daring her to challenge him further. Check his ID, he sneered at his partner. This man isn't who he says he is. The words hit Didi like a physical blow. Her heart began to race, her mind scrambling for sense. She looked at Emmanuel, really looked at him. The man who had stood shoulder to shoulder with her in blood and chaos. The man who had calmly guided her hands in the dark. The man who had prayed with his eyes open and his hands steady. The color had drained from his face, leaving him pale beneath the glow of the Christmas lights. But he didn't look guilty. He didn't look afraid. He looked tired. Resigned. Like someone who had been running for a long time and had finally stopped. Emmanuel, she whispered, her voice breaking despite herself. Tell them. Slowly, deliberately, Emmanuel stood. He gently loosened her fingers from his sleeve, as if afraid sudden movement might shatter something delicate between them. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. For a brief moment, the choir's voices seemed to fade entirely. He handed a badge to the officer. The change was immediate. The officer glanced down, then froze. His jaw slackened. He looked at the badge again, then at Emmanuel's face, as if finally seeing him clearly for the first time. Panic flickered across his features. He snapped upright, heels clicking together, and saluted. Sir. You were told a dangerous man was involved in a shooting connected to Dr. Yusuf, Emmanuel said calmly, his voice low but edged with unmistakable authority. That man was Kunle Adebayo. He is likely halfway to Lekki by now. I suggest you find him. And as for me, he paused. I am currently off duty. The officer swallowed hard and handed the badge back with shaking hands. Apologies, Captain. Carry on. Within seconds, the police melted back into the shadows, retreating down the church steps and disappearing into the Lagos night as if they had never been there. Didi stared after them, stunned. The choir transitioned seamlessly into the next verse, blissfully unaware. She turned back to Emmanuel, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Captain, she finally managed. You're a soldier. Emmanuel exhaled slowly and sat back down, dragging a hand over his face as though the weight of the night had finally landed. Military doctor, he said quietly. Army Medical Corps. Her breath caught. I've been in the Sambisa forest for the last 2 years, he continued, eyes fixed on the flickering candle before them. I saw too much, Didi. Too many bodies. Too many children. Too many nights where saving one person meant losing 5 others. His voice cracked, just barely. I came to Lagos to resign. I thought I had lost my faith. I thought I was too broken to heal anyone ever again. He finally looked at her then, and the vulnerability in his eyes unraveled something deep inside her. That's why I came to your clinic, he said softly. I was walking by, debating whether to leave medicine forever. Then I saw the crash. I saw you. And tonight, watching you save that boy in the dark, you saved me, Didi. You reminded me why we do this. The tears came without warning, hot and unstoppable. Didi reached for him, cupping his face as if grounding him there, as if proving he was real. We saved each other, she whispered. At that moment, the church bells began to ring, loud, joyful, insistent. Midnight. Christmas morning. Joy to the world burst from the choir, triumphant and alive, joined by saxophones that danced through the air and talking drums that vibrated through the wooden pews. The congregation erupted into cheers, laughter, embraces. Strangers hugged like family. Children spun in circles. Hope felt tangible, thick in the air. Emmanuel stood and pulled Didi up with him. The twinkling light strung across the ceiling reflected in his eyes, making them shine. I don't want to go back to Abuja, he said, his voice barely audible over the music. Not if it means being away from you. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I think God crashed that bus into your life for a reason. She laughed through her tears. That's a terrible thing to say. Is it? He smiled, the same warm, dazzling smile that had anchored her through fear, blood, and doubt. Didi, I think I'm falling in love with you. The fear that had ruled her life for 2 long years stirred, trying to rise again, but it found no place to stand. Her heart was too full. I think, she whispered, stepping closer, that is the best diagnosis I've had all year. Under the canopy of lights, amidst hallelujahs and drum beats, Emmanuel lowered his head and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of coffee, relief, and promise. Outside, Lagos remained sweltering, loud, and chaotic. Horns blared. Generators hummed. Life rushed on. But inside the church, in that sacred pocket of joy and music, Didi Yusuf finally found her peace. It was the Christmas miracle she hadn't asked for, but exactly the one she needed. Chapter 5, Dawn of Restoration. The week following Christmas felt like a dream. Lagos was slowly exhaling, the festive frenzy shifting into the quiet anticipation of the new year. For Didi, the Grace and Mercy Clinic no longer felt like a fortress she was hiding in, it felt like a home she was reclaiming. The broken glass at the entrance had been replaced, the new paint gleaming under the morning sun. Didi was finishing her rounds when a black police SUV pulled up. She tensed instinctively, but then she saw the familiar faces of the officers from the church. Doctor, the lead officer said, tipping his cap. We thought you should know. We caught Kunle Adebayo hiding out in a hotel in Ikorodu. He was trying to board a boat out of the country. He's in custody now. He won't be bothering you again. Didi felt a massive weight lift from her shoulders. Thank you, officer. Truly. Don't thank us, the officer chuckled. Thank you, Captain. He gave us the coordinates of Kunle's associates. The man has a reach we didn't expect. As the SUV pulled away, Emmanuel stepped out from the shadows of the clinic corridor, holding 2 meat pies and cold bottles of Chapman. He looked relaxed, the haunted look in his eyes replaced by a soft, steady light. Heard the news? He asked, handing her a bottle. I did, Didi said, leaning against the doorframe. You've been busy, Captain. Just tidying up loose ends, Emmanuel replied. He stepped closer, his presence as grounding as ever. I want you to be able to walk these streets without looking over your shoulder. You deserve that. Over the next few days, their relationship blossomed with the ease of a perennial flower. They spent evenings walking along the bar beach, the Atlantic spray cooling the humid air. They talked about their dreams, Didi's plan to expand the clinic into a teaching center, and Emmanuel's desire to practice medicine without the shadow of a uniform. I decided to stay, Emmanuel told her one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold. I've accepted a position at the university teaching hospital. I'm done with the front lines. Didi smiled, her heart swelling. Lagos is lucky to have you. Lagos didn't bring me here, Didi, he said, taking her hand and weaving his fingers through hers. You did. On New Year's Eve, they returned to the clinic together. They sat in her office, the same flickering bulb now replaced with a steady, warm LED. The sounds of the city celebrating echoed outside, but inside, there was a profound, holy quiet. Didi looked at the man beside her, the healer who had walked out of the darkness and into her life. She realized then that the grace in her clinic's name wasn't just a word on a sign. It was the reality she was living. Happy New Year, Emmanuel, she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, his forehead resting against hers. Happy New Year, Didi. To us, and to the many more lives we're going to heal together. As the first fireworks of the year exploded over the Lagos Lagoon, Didi knew that the greatest gift wasn't just the love she had found, but the woman she had become again. If you enjoyed this story of healing and hope, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more beautiful stories and high-stakes drama.